Hey guys, welcome to part 4 of our hands-on project on building the obligatory blog. So in this lesson, we're going to accomplish two things. First, we're going to finish up the view aspect. And second, we are going to write the functionality so that we can create new posts directly from our admin section of our site. So let's get started. The very first thing is we wrote the view functionality in the last lesson, but if I view the source here, what you'll notice is that we are no longer recognizing the layout. We ignored the layout. So now we need to bring that back into play. So I'm going to return to our code editor, and the first thing I will do is go to functions.php. And this is where we include the view, but notice there's no mention to the layout file. If I open up the layout file, you'll see it's just trying to include a view path, but we are never including the layout file itself. So let's fix that. The first thing I'm going to do is change this to include the views/layout file instead. And then we have this path right here. And if you'll remember, when we call the view function, as the first parameter, we specify the name of the view that we want to load. So now we know that we're loading the layout file, but the view that we need is actually called index in that case. But we need to expand that because we don't want to just load index. And while we could do something like this, include path.view.php, let's keep that a little bit cleaner and change it to include path. Then from our functions file, we can simply say path equals path.view.php, like that. And one thing that you could also optionally do is ensure that the user specifies a path. If one was not included, you could return, you could throw an exception, you could do a couple things. But for now, let's keep it like this. So now, when they specify index as the path, we're going to rewrite that to index.view.php, and then we include the layout file. Now, within the layout file, we include the view path, which is now index.view.php. Let's try this and see if it works. I'm going to reload the page, and we do get this one error, view/layout.php on line 11. And that's just because I made a typo. So I will fix that right now. One more time. And now we're getting the same thing as before, but now we are bringing in our layout file. Let's also ensure that the single view works as well. View the source, and yep, we do have our layout, and then we've embedded the view. Good. So that part is done for now. The next thing that I want to do is set up our admin section. So let's create a new folder called admin. And within it, let's add a new file called index.php. So I will simply write admin section, and let's make sure we can see this on the page. Now we're going to admin. There we go. Now we are within our admin section that we will ultimately want to lock down from the public. All right, so the first thing that we want to do here is set up a form so that we can create new posts. So let's do that now. We're going to view, and I'm going to load admin create. I will pull in the create view. And right now I don't need to pass anything, so I will just specify that. So now if I load it, we're going to get this error called undefined function view. And that's because we still need to connect to our database. So require blog.php. But in this case, now we're starting to see that this is a relative path. So if I view it, now we're going to get this new error because it wants us to go up a directory like so. Now if I reload it, we get this new warning. We're trying to include this view, but it hasn't been created yet. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll create a new folder within here to separate everything. And within there, I will create a file called create.view.php. And now we will say creating. Reload it, and now we have loaded that new view. Good. For now, I'm going to close some of these other files that we don't need. There we go. So we have our admin section. We do whatever it is we need to do, and then we load the create view. We want to make sure that we are pulling in our layout file, and we are. Good. So now let's go ahead and create the form. I'll bring that in right now. For now, I'm going to set the form action and method to post, and I'll keep the action blank just for now. Now we need to add our form elements. So we will store these within an unordered list. And now for the first one, we simply need to replicate all of the inputs that we have in our table. And let's go ahead and remind ourselves what those are. Here I have connected to my SQL, and now let's describe the posts table. And these are the fields that we need to add. So we need something for the title and something for the body. So that means we need a text input and a text area. So first we need a label for the title, and we'll give that a value of title. a text field is fine. And then let's do one more, and this one will be for the body. And we'll say body. But this time we're going to change it to a text area. And that will be for body. And I'm also going to give an ID to this title field because a label corresponds to the ID of the input. So you usually want to add a name and an ID attribute to your form inputs. All right, that looks fairly good. Let's reload the page, and now we have a section for the title and body. It's not styled nicely, but that's okay. We're not doing that part. Your job would be to do the CSS to make everything look pretty. What I am going to do, though, is at the top, add an H1 that says, create a new post. Like that. But that said, if we want, why don't we add just a little bit of CSS, the bare minimum, just to make it look decent. So for example, list items within a form, we will set list style to none to remove the bullets, like that. I will also set the label to display block, that way it takes up all available space like that, good. Next, I'm going to wrap our main content area within a div like this, and now I can do things like container, width is 600 pixels, margin is auto to center it on the page like that. And next, let's get rid of some of the spacing on that UL. So we'll say form UL, padding is 0. There we go. And then the final thing is just add some spacing below those inputs. So form input and form text area, let's add margin bottom of 1.5 ems. There we go. And then the last thing is let's set the text area only within the form, and we'll set a width of 100% and a height of 300 pixels. And you know what? Why don't we make the input that wide as well? So we'll set width is 100%, and now I can get rid of that first declaration. Okay, and that's fine. We're not going to do anything more than that. So you create a new post, you specify the title of the post, you specify the body for your post, and then finally we need a submit button. So I will add that as well. Within the create view, one more, and this will be input type equals submit value equals create post. One more time, reload it, and that's one thing is because we did not specify what type of input, now the button is going to be 100% wide as well. But we can fix that easily by saying input type equals text. Reload it, and that's fine. I'm not too worried about it. So now if we just click the post button, it's going to post to itself. And that's because we specified as much by setting the action to blank. Now, many times you will want to post to a specific page, but in this case, we can keep it simple and post to this file as well. And now, hopefully you remember how to determine if the form was posted. And we do that by specifying if server request method equals post in this case. And that's okay because we only have one form. But if you have a bigger website where you have more than one form, this may not be enough, and you'll want to specify if a specific input within your form exists. But for now, that's okay, and we can say form was posted. Let's try it. We load it, the request method is get, but when we post it, now it's posted, and now the request method is set to post. So now we simply want to grab those values. So the title equals post title, and the body equals post body. So now I want to do the bare minimum of validation for this little project here. So all I want to do is say if the title is blank or the title is blank, then we need to just load that form again and let them know, hey, you need to fill these out. So I will say if empty title or empty body, in that case, I'm going to set maybe a status variable and say status equals please fill out both inputs, like that. And then we simply load the create form again. But now within the create form, maybe at the bottom, we can say PHP if is set status. In that case, we want to just display that text to them. And if, and we will say PHP status, like that. So now we've echoed that status, but we have to remember we're doing things differently than the way we did it before. If I go back to index.php, remember we are setting the status variable, but now we're no longer including views, we're using our helpful view function. So I want to make sure that anything that we want our view to have, we need to pass through to the view function. So we will set status equals status. But we have to be careful because remember, the status variable will only be set if the form was posted and the title and body variables are empty. So just for now, I'm going to say else status equals an empty string, and then we will come back to that. Good, so let's try it. So we load the page, we don't get anything. But now if I post it, we do get this notice, and then you can style and position that however you want. And that's all we're going to do for validation. So let's come back. Now we're doing our validation, and we've taken care of if the fields were empty. But otherwise, if they weren't, then create a new row in the table. So to create a new row, let's go back to our helpful DB functions, and we have one to connect, we have one to query, and we have one to get, and we also have one to get from the posts. Notice we did hard code that in. You might want to remove that. But for our situation right now, the only one that we can use is query. So I'm going to copy that and bring it into our index area. And now I'm going to run db query. Now we could say use blog/db, or if you're only using it once, sometimes it's easier just to do blog/db/query. Now our query is going to be, and I will place this on a new line, insert into posts, title, body, and the values will be, and I'm going to use named parameters again, title, body, just like that. Next, I need to specify the bindings. So we will say within an array, the title is title, and the body is body. There we go. And then the final thing is it wants the connection, and we will have the connection because we required blog.php, and that created the variable for us. So we don't have to do that again. Okay, so now we have our new insert query. Insert into the posts, and the values are going to be the title and the body that we specified there. But now we may have a problem because look, we are running this query function, but this time we are inserting a new row. So if I go back to db.php and we scroll down, query does prepare it and it does execute it, but it also is sort of assuming that we are fetching rows. So then it tries to call fetch all, but with an insert query, there's nothing to fetch. So keep that in mind. We will likely have to come back and fix this. But let's continue on and assume it will work. Back to index.php, I will save it, and then we're going to test this out. So reload the page, and we will say web post and the body. Now I'm going to create the post, and yes, we do get this fatal error, uncaught exception, PDO exception. And what we see is that it occurred in the DB file on line 30. So now if we go back to line 30, yep, this is causing an error. So we need to fix this. What if we instead, rather than doing these two lines right here, we simply run return statement and execute. Now I'm going to reload the page, and now we get an undefined variable status, and that's okay, we knew that would happen. But let's come back and select star from posts, and you'll see that we have a handful of rows. So let's clear that out, truncate table posts, and one more time, do this again. Web post, here's the body, create post, and it did create the post. If I select star from posts, now we have inserted that new row into the table. Good. So let's figure out this status issue on line 24. Now the reason why that is happening is because, think about it, if we perform a simple GET request, that will run. If the form is posted but the user does not enter a title or body, then we set status. But what if the form is posted, they have filled out both fields? Well, then this runs, but then status is never set. So we need a better way to deal with this. Why don't we instead create a new data array at the top, and this will house any variables that this controller will need. Now we can get rid of that entirely, and we will say if those are empty, we will set data status like so, and now I can get rid of this array and send through the data array. That way, in some cases, maybe we're just sending through an empty array, and that's okay. And in other cases, we are populating that. So let's try it again. Reload the page. Here is another post made on the web. I will create the post. Now we've reloaded, but we haven't provided any kind of result, so that's something we should keep in mind. But if we do come back and select star, we are successfully entering those rows. Good. So what I want to do now is provide some level of feedback for the user. So now we have run this query function. We've inserted the row. Then we will set, and we should probably do some checking to make sure that the insert query was performed successfully. But for now, let's set data status equals row has successfully been inserted, like that. All right, let's do one last one. Third post, third body. And now if I click create post, we do get this response, and you can style that however you want. But now we did change that query function. So let's go back to the home page and see what we need to do to fix that. Well, right here, it's looking okay. If we run web post, now we're seeing within single.php, we no longer see anything at all. So let's figure that out. Back to single.php, and now we're running get by ID, but if you'll remember, get by ID is trying to run the query function. So this is what we can do instead. We can say query equals that function, and then we can return query fetch all, like that. And that should be good, but if I load it in the browser, I'm going to get this fatal error call to member function fetch all on a non-object. Well, that's weird. We know that we ran the query, and we should be able to run fetch all, but if I come back to the top, notice that I am not returning the statement object, I'm returning the result of the execute function, and that's not good. So let's delete that and then return the statement object, like that. Now I'm going to try it one more time, and there we go. Now we're getting the same thing. Third post, here's another post, and web post. So if we've done everything successfully, when we create a new post, it should be displayed at the top. And let's see if that's the case. I'm going to go to our admin area, which will soon be locked down, and I will write latest post. Here's the body. I will create the post that has been added, but now if I go back to the home page, notice that it's being added to the bottom, not to the top. So how do we fix that? Well, it's actually very easy. I'll go back to Sublime Text, and now when we run get, we will select star from table name, limit according to whatever they specify, but now I will say we're going to order it by the ID in descending order. That way we want the most recent one to be at the top, and then it will go in descending order. So now if I reload it, now notice the latest post is on top. And if we change that to ascending order, that would make the oldest post display first. But I'm going to remove that and return it back to descending order. So this just about finishes us up for the day. I just want to run a quick comb through the project to see if there's anything we need to change. I'm going to come back to our DB file. And I want you to notice this query. We're executing it and immediately returning it. But why don't we instead return statement? And I'm going to make sure that the row count is greater than 0. So if that's the case, and I will wrap this within parentheses because we're using the ternary operator, if that's the case, let's return statement. Otherwise, we will return false. Now I can scroll down and say, if query, then query fetch all, and then else you could do something else, and we can take a look at that in a future lesson. All right, so that looks fine. Our layout file, I'm going to leave a note here to put this within an external file. But other than that, that's okay. And now we have our admin index controller. It's a little bit muddy, and now we're starting to see, even with controllers, maybe we need another layer of separation. We've already separated our view, which is fantastic. Now we have this new file. It's very clean. It's only really for HTML and filtering through maybe an array or something like that. But still, we're doing a lot here. We are doing this little bit of validation, maybe something like a model, which you could think of as kind of more of a workhouse. It does higher level tasks. It connects to the database, things like that. Well, maybe that could be responsible for our validation. And then we have this generic query function. Maybe that's something we could fix. We set a status variable. That's okay. So this isn't too bad at all. But we're starting to see with a very simple project, maybe there is a need for another separation, and that would be the model. So you have the view, the model, and the controller, and together, that stands for MVC. And if you've ever heard of the MVC architecture, that's what we are referring to. Okay, stay tuned for the next lesson. If you have any questions at all, just leave a comment on this lesson page or head over to the tutsplus.com forums. My name's Jeffrey Way. See you later.